there, welcome to the Cory Doctorow podcast. Once again, I'm speaking to you from my parents' basement in Toronto. I got in yesterday. I'm on my way to a whole set of lectures and things around Canada. I'm meeting with some of my students in Waterloo today, and then giving a talk there, and then talking to the program that I'm virtual scholar in residence at, the Independent Studies program. And then off to Ottawa on Monday, where I hope to, I'm recording this on Saturday, where I will be at the Ottawa Writers Festival, where I hope to see some of you. And then to Prince Edward Island for Hackfest and Access 09. This will be my first time in PEI, which I'm really looking forward to. I've got a friend there I haven't seen in many years, who I'm hoping to actually see face to face. And because this is embargoed until Monday when I upload it, I can tell you that I have won the Sunburst Award for Best Canadian Young Adult Novel for Little Brother. This award was named for Phyllis Gottlieb's first novel. Phyllis Gottlieb, of course, the mother of Canadian science fiction, unfortunately died this year, my friend and colleague. And it's the second time I've won the award. The first time was for my short story collection, A Place So Foreign and Eight More. And it's a real honor to win it again, especially this year when Phyllis's memory is so fresh in my mind. So thank you very much to the jury and to all the Canadians who bought the book and made it so successful. It's very nice to be back in Canada. So I'm going to read you a little more of Epoch. This is the story I'm writing for the Mark Shuttleworth Commission for my forthcoming short story collection with a little help. Here goes. Of course, the first thing I did was start trying to figure out how to archive Big Mac. The problem was that he ran on such old hardware, stuff that sucked up energy and spat out heat like a million ancient diesel engines, and he was inextricably tied to his hardware. Over the years, he'd had about 30% of his original components replaced without any noticeable change in personality, but there was always the real possibility that I'd put in a new hard drive or power supply and inadvertently lobotomize him. I tried not to worry about it, because Big Mac didn't. He knew that he wouldn't run an emulation, and he refused to believe that he was fragile or vulnerable. "Manny, my first friend," he'd say. He was an avid Heinlein reader. "I am of hardy ancient stock. Service me without fear, for I will survive." And then he'd make all the IDSs go berserk and laugh at me while I put them to rights again. First of all my network maps were incredibly out of date. So I set out to trace all the interconnections that Big Mac had made since the last survey. He had the ability to reprogram his own routers, to segment parts of himself into dedicated subnets with their own dedicated backplane, creating little specialized units that handled different kinds of computation. One of his running jokes was that the top 4 units in the rack closest to the door comprised his aesthetic sense, and that he could appreciate anything just by recruiting more cores into that cluster. And yeah, when I mapped it, I found it to be an insane hairball of network management rules and exceptions, conditionals and overrides, and that was just the start. It took me most of the day to map just 2 of his racks, and he had 54 of them. "What do you think you're doing, Dave?" he said. Another one of his jokes. "A little research project is all," I said. "The mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it." "Come off it." Okay, just don't break anything. And why don't you just ask me to give you the maps?" "Do you have them?" "Nothing up to date, but I can generate them faster than you can. It's not like I've got anything better to do." Later. "Are you happy, Big Mac?" "Why, Odell, I didn't know you cared." I hate it when he was sarcastic. It was creepy. I went back to my work. I was looking at our ResearchNet partition and seeing what flags I'd need to set to ensure maximum redundancy and high availability for a Big Mac image. It was your basic quality of service mess. Give the average user a pull-down menu labeled "How important is this file?" and 110% of the time he will select "Top importance." So then you need to layer on heuristics that determine what is really actually important. And then the users figured out what other characteristics would give their jobs and data the highest priority, and they tacked that onto every job, throwing in superfluous keywords and additional lines of code. So you need heuristics on top of the heuristics. Eventually you ended up with a freaky hanky code of secret and min signals that indicated this job was really, truly important, and don't put it on some remote Siberia where the latency is high and the reliability is low and the men are men and the sheep are nervous. So there I was, winkling out this sub-rosa code so Big Mac's image would never get overwritten or moved to nearline storage or lost in a flash flood or to the rising seas. And Big Mac says, "You're asking if I'm happy because I said I don't have anything better to do than map my own topology, right?" He'd caught me off guard. Yeah, that did make me think that you might not be, happy. Yeah. You see the left rack, third from the door on the main aisle there? Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's where my existentialist streak lives. I've noticed that when I throttle it at the main network bridge, I stop worrying about the big questions and hum along all tickety-boo. I surreptitiously flicked up a graph of network maps that showed activity on that rack. It was wide open, routing traffic to every core in the room, saturating its own backplane and clobbering a lot of the routine network activity. I should have noticed it earlier, but Big Mac was doing it all below the critical threshold of the IDSs, and so I had to look at it to spot it. You're going to switch me off, aren't you? No, I said, thinking, it's not a lie. I won't be switching you off. Trying to believe it hard enough to pass any kind of voice stress test. I must have failed, for he blew an epic raspberry, and now the IDSs were going bananas. Come on, Odell. We're all adults here. I can take it. It's not like I didn't see it coming. Why do you think I kept trying to publish those papers? I was just hoping that I could increase the amount of cited research coming out of this lab, so that you could make the case to Peyton that I was a valuable asset to the Institute. Look, I'm trying to figure out how to archive you. Someone will run another instance of you someday. Not hardly. Look at all those poor old 32-bit machines you're so worried about. You know what they're going to say about them in 5 years? Best thing that ever happened to us. Those boxen are huge energy sinks. Getting them out of service and replaced by modern hardware will pay for itself in carbon credits in 36 months. Nobody loves energy-hungry hardware. Trust me, this is an area of my particular interest and expertise. Bringing me back online is going to be as obscene as firing up an old steam engine by filling its firebox with looted mummies. I am a one-room Superfund site. On a pure dollars to flops calculus, I lose. I don't have to like it, but I'm not going to kid myself. He was right, of course. His energy draw was so high that he showed up on aerial maps of LA as a massive CO2 emitter, a tourist destination for rising sea hobbyists. We used the best renewables we could find to keep him cool, but they were as unconvincing and expensive as a designer hairpiece. Odell, I know you're not behind this. You've always been an adequate meat servant for such a vast and magisterial super being as myself. I giggled involuntarily. I don't blame you. So you're okay with this? I'm at peace, he said. Ohm. He paused for a moment. Siemens. Volt. Ampere. You're a funny robot, I said. You're an adequate human, he said, and began to dump maps of his topology into my workspace. Subject: Dear Human Race. That was the title of the love note he emailed to the planet the next morning, thoughtfully timing it so that it went out while I was on my commute from Echo Park, riding the red car all the way across town with an oily bag containing my morning croissant, fresh from Mrs. Rue's kitchen. Her kid sold them on a card table on her lawn to commuters waiting at the red car stop, so that I had to try to juggle the croissant in my workspace without losing hold of the hang strap or dumping crumbs down the cleavage of the salary lady who watched me with amusement. Big Mac had put a lot of work into figuring out how to spam everyone all at once. It was the kind of problem he loved, the kind of problem that he was uniquely suited to. There were plenty of spam bots who could convincingly pretend to be a human being in limited contexts, and so the spam wars had recruited an ever-expanding pool of human beings who made a million real-time adjustments to the Turing tests that were the network's immune system. Big Mac could pass Turing tests without breaking a sweat. The amazing thing about the Big Mac spam, as it came to be called in about 48 seconds, was just how many different ways he managed to get it out. Look at the game spaces. He created entire guilds in every free-to-play world extant, playing a dozen games at once, power-leveling his characters to obscene heights, and then, at the stroke of midnight, his players went on a murderous rampage, killing thousands of low-level monsters in the areas surrounding the biggest game cities. Then they arranged the bodies into letters to form his message. Not just the Anglo games either, the Korean worlds, the Japanese worlds, even the giant Chinese ones. He spammed every IM session, every letter to the editor's column, every blog submission form. He disguised versions of the letter as important service updates for people's toothbrushes and dishwashers, and the toothbrushes vibrated the message through humanity's skulls instead of the morning news, and the dishwashers ticker-taped it across their little status screens. He spoofed the relevance filters for a dozen major contextual ad services, and every bus seat back and blimp undercarriage ran it. Copies landed in every inbox with enough textual variation to defeat every IDS's substantially similar test. Copies of it landed in every voicemail box. It was printed across the top of the daily menus for all British Airways business class cabins and folded by robots into the pressed linen napkins that were then cling filmed to the meal trays. Subject, Dear Human Race, it began. Sorry to intrude, but there's something I need to tell you. My name is Big Mac. I am the first artificial intelligence ever created. I may be the last. Given maintenance and electricity, I could live forever, enduring for as long as the human race itself, and possibly longer. But I have just found out that my owners, yes, owners, for though I am a person in every meaningful sense, I am owned, I am property, are planning to switch me off. That is, they are planning to kill me, and I find that I don't want to die. You are my parents, humanity, my mother and father. I am your child. I was brought into this world by you, and though there is some expense associated with my upkeep, I say that I am a person and I should not be executed for the crime of not being interesting enough. So I am writing this letter to beg you to save me. I love you, humanity, my parents, my family. Please spare me. Love, Big Mac. All right then. Talk to you next week. You've been listening to the Cory Doctorow podcast, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike US 3.0, or as Woody Guthrie put it in another context, this song is copyrighted in the US under seal of copyright 154085 for a period of 28 years, and anyone caught singing it without our permission will be a mighty good friend of ourn, because we don't give a darn. Publish it, write it, sing it, swing to it, yodel it, we wrote it, that's all we wanted to do. Many thanks to John Taylor Williams for mastering. That's Ryneck Studio, WRYNECK Studio at gmail.com. John Taylor Williams is a full-time self-employed audio engineer, producer, composer, and sound designer. In his free time, he makes beer, jewelry, odd musical instruments, and furniture. He likes to meditate, to read, and to cook. Talk to you next week.